Hello everybody, and hope you're having a great day. For this video, I'm going to cover microstores. So microstore is a way to have multiple separate product catalogs that can have different pricing for specific customers or groups of customers while operating on the same domain name. So simply put, it is just catalog restriction. Now you may have heard of a similar sounding term called a multi-store. A multi-store is actually a separate storefront with its own separate catalog, domain, and theme. And a microstore cannot have its own separate theme because it's just an extension of your main store. And the last big difference is microstores are free while multi-stores are not, so keep that in mind. So now that we know what a microstore is, let's set one up. So let's go to the bottom left and select settings and then microstores. And the first page that we're going to run into just has a few settings letting us determine if a microstore needs to be selected first before actually shopping, and you can do that by clicking or selecting microstore required. But to actually make a microstore, let's go microstore list, and then the top right hand corner select the green new button. So the first thing we want to do is give it a name, so I'll call it video store. Now if you want your customers to enter in a password before entering the microstore, you just select require microstore password and then set the password right here. Next is the microstore path. So what this does is it creates a URL rewrite for this specific microstore. Now it must start with a / and then the name of your microstore and then .aspx. Now if you do not have anything right here, your URL address will look something similar to this. So it's a little scary, right? Now if you have something in the microstore path, it will look something similar to what we had earlier, so just like name.aspx. Now just another heads up, it must only be / the name.aspx entered into the path. Now next we have to set up a country for a microstore, a state, a postal code, and finally microstore default shipping country. So if you do not have this selected, you'll receive an error message that says default country ID required. So we have set microstore cookie. So what this will do is, if enabled, this will drop a cookie in your customer's cache that will force them to always return to this specific microstore. Now your customers can get rid of this either by waiting until this expiration date that you can set expires, or if they clear their browser cache, which is done usually by pressing Control or Command Shift and Delete in most browsers. And the last thing we want to look at is the activation and expiration date, as well as the inactive URL. So you can set a date where your microstore is available for your customers to access, maybe around a holiday, and you can set when that will end. And if you have these dates set up, you can put something in the microstore inactive URL field, and what this will do is redirect your customers to a URL address that you specify if the customer tries to access the microstore either before the activation date or after the expiration date. Now the next thing we're going to look at is the active catalog, and this is really the meat and potatoes of microstores because this is the catalog restriction bit I mentioned earlier. So let's go to our settings, bottom left, and then catalog, and then active catalog. Now if we look in the top right, there's a drop down with our main store and our microstores, and we can tell if it's a microstore if it has this dash in front of it. So let's select one, and then what we want to do is make sure that show all catalog is not selected and microstore catalog override is selected. And what this does is it makes it to where only the categories that we select will be viewable. So let's search for a category. I made one called microstore category. So let's search, and anything with this search term will appear. So I'm going to select this category and then add selected. And if is root is selected, this means our microstore's product catalog will begin at the root category, and all products in all categories below will be in the catalog. So now that we have this set up, that means for the test microstore, the only thing that will appear is what products in this category, this microstore category. Now, finally, we're going to cover how your customers can actually access the microstore you created. So if your customers have access to the URL address of the microstore, they can access it that way. So you can either give them that URL address directly or have a hyperlink set up on the store. And then finally, if we go to themes and then edit our theme, and then I'm going to go to the header because that's where most people set it, but you can set it anywhere if you'd like. But we're going to add a widget for a microstore dropdown. So let's click on add widget. And what this will do is list out all of your microstores, and your customer can select it from there. So find microstores, click add, and I'll add it to our list of widgets. And then we want to edit it. It will be called microstore dropdown. You can either activate it, deactivate it, and by default it will say microstore, but we can change this here on the header text. So we'll call it video microstore dropdown. And save this. And let's save on our main page. And now if we go to our store, we should see a drop-down menu with the text that we put. Video microstore dropdown, and here are our microstores.